working out how things are, working out how to do dating and all of that, without the terror that if you touch in the wrong place at the wrong time, you may find that your whole life is destroyed.
See, I
and there
like
is
that
far
terror.
too much. Well,
I like that.
As a mother of a teenage boy, I don't like
really?
that terror.
That's the most thing I've ever heard.
What the fuck?
Hello everyone, this has been on my mind for a very long time, for a hot minute, and I really wanted to give my opinion on this video as a woman on this so-called feminist. She claims that she isn't a feminist, but I'm gonna go ahead and assume that she will absolutely call herself one if it was to benefit her. Regardless of that, her views and sentiments are shared by so-called feminists, so it doesn't really matter if she is a feminist herself when the third wave feminists talk like this all the time anyway. Let's just get straight into it. So if you aren't aware, this woman is Santina, who is a political journalist who believes that the Me Too movement hasn't gone far enough, that the false accusations of rape and sexual assault against men aren't important, and that men should be afraid in this climate, and not in a way that is validating a man's fear to live amongst modern feminists. No, afraid as in they deserve to be persecuted or vilified just for being a man. This was a debate on Piers Morgan Uncensored, and before anyone asks, I am a huge Piers Morgan fan and supporter, and I salute him for being so honest and upfront about what most people are too scared to say. I will leave the link to the full video in the description, but for now I'll just go over some of Ava's statements and clarify why we as a society should be aware that this woman's actions and words are inherently dangerous to our society and are in no way progressive. Just as a side note before I begin, there is a small mention of Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate at the start of this clip. Now I do like Jordan Peterson, and I can see certain points that Andrew Tate tries to make, but overall this isn't what this video is about. This is about Ava being the epitome of a dangerous feminist, and that's not me turning a blind eye to the things that Andrew Tate has supposedly done. I just don't know enough about that to offer an opinion on it or analyse it. It still doesn't revoke my right to talk about Ava and her harmful words.
There's a serious point here. A lot of young men feel they're getting disenfranchised by society. They're all being over-demonised, that any attempt to be the traditional male figure is now being rubbished and called toxic.
Well, I mean, if you really felt that and you really went out there and you were an alpha male, then you wouldn't be bothered about a bunch of women telling you that you were.
Well, you would if you get cancelled, like Andrew Tate. If you get banned from.
I mean, he's hardly been cancelled. He was on your programme, which is on national television.
But it's the only platform actually he's had for a long time because all the social media companies banned him, literally banned him. He had his email gone, his Google gone, his Facebook gone. It all went down like dominoes.
Well, he's still on there, very, very prolific on there. I can't move for clips of him.
Yeah, but they're not generated by him now.
Ava here does not seem to understand the way in which public opinions and the social media mob can affect a person's reputation. Whether or not you like Andrew Tate, and regardless whether or not you like what he says, his opinions are his own, and he was quote-unquote cancelled because of them. He was being largely slammed by the media and was thrown off of social media altogether, as well as denied access to appear on any mainstream network. This isn't exclusive to the Tate situation. This includes people like J.K. Rowling, people like Piers Morgan himself, and even Jordan Peterson, Candace Owens. Anybody who has an opinion that doesn't align with the woke left is punished by having their platform taken away from them. Picking at straws with the Andrew Tate situation is not relevant here because this was prior to the charges brought against him, right? And it is almost always as a result of a mob mentality and the pursuit of some kind of 1984 Orwellian society. What Ava fails to realise is that her comments on Andrew Tate not being expunged and whatnot is a very ignorance is bliss approach to the state that the nature of debate is in. You can't have a debate with somebody who won't accept that they may be wrong, or that someone else may have a different opinion to them. Also, her comment about the if you're an alpha male, you wouldn't care about what a bunch of women think about you is demeaning to your own gender, my love. and is inadvertently agreeing with what people like Jordan Peterson and the young man sat next to her, which is Conservative commentator Connor Tomlinson, are saying. If men were to go by what you just said yourself, Ava, and not listen to the women around them and not care about what they're saying, it would be a hashtag #MeToo all over again, and you would go on a rant about women not being listened to. Which one is it? Because you can't have both.
That for teenage boys now, they are so terrified of the consequences of putting a foot out of line. It's hard enough being a young teenager, working out how things are, working out how to do dating and all of that, without the terror that if you touch in the wrong place at the wrong time, you may find that your whole life is destroyed.
See, I
and there
like
is
that
far
terror.
too much. Well,
I like that.
As a
I
mother
think
of
that
a
men
teenage
should be
boy, I
frightened.
don't like
Really?
that
That's
terror.
the most
I do.
malicious thing I've ever heard.
That is
I think that
awful.
men should be frightened
I think
to
you'd
touch
feel
women in a way
differently
that
if you
they're
were
not comfortable with.
But we're talking about
Yeah, but we're not talking
teenagers,
about. We're not
children.
talking about.
We're talking
yeah, but
about
it's an
young
interesting
children.
thing that you see. I would say that attitude actually is part of the problem too.
It
is that's to me toxic femininity.
It is.
That is saying you should all be terrified, you men, if you put one
assaulting.
Well, I think we all understand what sexual
What is
assault
an
is.
assault?
What Isabel's talking about is that young teenage clumsiness
really
in many
hard.
cases, which is now being recategorised as assault. Is that a problem?
It's not being recategorised as assault. It's always been assault. It's just we're finally talking about it.
I don't agree with that.
That's
But
ridiculous.
Teenage boy fumbling with
a touch
teenage
on the
girl
knee.
is not
Not even that.
in most cases assault, is it?
This, by far, is one of the most vile things I've ever heard a woman say. Men should be frightened. In this context, we are talking about young adolescent boys. And people like you, Ava, are teaching adolescent girls who do mature faster that it is okay to turn around, no matter how much further down the line that is, and accuse a male of sexual assault. We aren't talking about rape here. We are talking about harassment and assault. Don't twist my words. I understand that it can be just as tragic and life-altering. But again, that is not the point of what we're talking about, is it? Adolescent boys, just like adolescent girls, are learning how to navigate the world. And the issue here isn't that a boy may clumsily touch a girl without realising it's wrong. That happens, the boy should be told off by their parents and it should constitute as a learning experience. And the most disgusting thing that Me Too has taught our youth, and young people in general, is that it is 100% okay and very, very easy to accuse a boy of sexual assault and have his entire world and life ruined by a clumsy mistake. Intent is something that we must consider because 9 out of 10 times, a teenage boy is immature, clumsy, and won't have any malice in their actions. How we teach our children and young people, not just boys, but young people and children in general, is the key solution to these issues, Ava. Not taking it to the extreme and calling a 14-year-old a rapist 10 years later because Me Too has taught us that it's okay to do that. Young boys are getting progressively more scared to interact with girls just because it is such a big thing now to turn around and accuse people all you want. This happens all the time when there's petty fallouts. This happened when I was about 14 or 15. Around me, there'd be a breakup between a girl and a boy, and the girl would say that the boy assaulted her or did something nasty to her because she was angry at him, when it didn't really happen. 2 weeks later, they'd be back together because it is just petty. Things are said out of anger because that's part of who we are as human beings. I know that sometimes it can be true, but it's a different scenario altogether. Me Too is teaching girls and women that it's okay to do that when it's not. Just like it's not okay to touch somebody intimately and sexually without their consent. It's not an all men are bad situation, Ava, and it's not a case of all teenage boys are predators. It's called educating our youth, not persecuting them.
A lot of very bad people, Harvey Weinstein and others, got their due comeuppance. We can all agree with that.
Yeah.
This is not even something to be debated. We're really talking about the grey line, right? Where is that grey line?
Yeah.
How do you navigate it? When you're an experienced adult and you've been around the block in many ways, you can navigate that much more intelligently and with emotional intelligence than you can if you're a teenage boy. And I think the point Isabel makes is a good one. I've had 3 sons in their 20s. I've always taught them to be respectful to women, and I believe they are. But I do think it's really hard for a 16, 17-year-old boy now in this environment to know even how to start
they are all
having some
terrified.
kind of physical relationship with a woman.
Those good boys are all terrified. I know that from talking to my son. He's just like, I'm just not going there. Is that healthy?
Yes, I think it is actually. I think it's better to not have a physical relationship than to have one that could ruin a woman's life.
But then how do they ever start?
Well, don't. If you're not 100% sure,
What? Are we going
don't.
What are you going to have? A bunch of neutered
Celebrate.
boys who
But
never
it's
had...
so obvious.
We actually
It's
do
sort
have
of
that.
like-
Gen Z is having far less sexual relationships
Yes,
than any
they
ever before.
are. It's true.
And
young
hang
people
on,
have stopped having sex.
I agree with the first part of your sentence, actually. If you're not willing to have a sexual relationship with clearly defined lines, don't have one. And so I actually told my mates at university, don't sleep around with girls. 1, girls don't bring a guy home that you don't know what he's capable of. 2, guys, don't bring a girl home if you think that possibly she could have a false accusation against you.
Ava, my love, you are so misguided here. How on earth is it healthier to remain abstinent because you're scared of an allegation? How is that healthy for young boys or even young girls or just young anyone? As growing humans, teenagers experiment with all this stuff and it's a learning experience. Like Piers said, it's about growing emotional maturity. You cannot use that emotional immaturity of young boys as a weapon against them. That's exactly what this is. Ava is missing the point of this entire debate. It's not about defining assault or even catching boys assaulting. It's about the way that Me Too has caused an uncertainty in boys and has decreased the amount that my generation, I'm 21 by the way, and younger are being intimate. We are being infantilized by this Hollywood trend of Me Too, and it's stopping us from having relationships out of fear of either being assaulted or being accused of it. And nowadays, accusations of assault are more weapons and accessories than real pursuits of justice, and that is just a fact.
I've met quite a few women in my life who are pretty toxic themselves, and I don't see the debate being framed around that at all.
No, but the point is that we're still in a situation where only 5% of rape cases actually even go to trial.
Which is ridiculous.
But that's the
Right.
extreme end of it,
Yeah.
isn't
The
it?
idea-
You're talking
but
about
I'm
rape
talking
here.
about-
But David, we can all agree
assault.
that's wrong. We can all agree that's wrong.
But okay, so even on the extreme end of it, rape doesn't even go to trial. If you're assaulted, and that is life changing.
Yeah.
What happened to Rose McGowan
Yeah.
with Harvey
I
Weinstein?
know Rose well.
Was
Yeah, but
life
these are
changing,
extreme
and
things.
she didn't get her comeuppance.
Yeah, but
She
Ava, we'd
lost
all
her
agree about
career.
that. Well, I think what has sent a shudder through all of our spines from your mouth today is the line that all young men should be terrified of any physical
assaulting
contact.
someone.
Well, no, you didn't say it like
didn't
that.
say that.
You said basically of starting any physical contact with a
Unless
woman.
you're sure.
Well,
Unless
how
you're
does a
How are you
16,
supposed to
17-year-old
be
boy
sure
know?
When she can rescind consent on something completely nebulous.
Okay, can I ask you this? If
Yes.
you were going to take someone to bed and you weren't 100% sure that they wanted to go to bed with you,
Yes.
would you go with
No,
them?
I would not do that.
Then
But the
that's what
point
I'm
was,
talking
Aziz
about.
Ansari was sure, for example, and then later she went and published a long piece
Right.
about how she regretted it and lumped him in with Harvey Weinstein.
I mean,
Is that okay?
Ava,
Ava, do you feel
Thank you.
any of it, Ava's gone too far? Do you think the pendulum has gone too far at all?
No, I don't think it's gone far enough, actually.
See, Connor understands what is being argued here. Ava is going on about Harvey Weinstein and the 5% of rape cases that go to court, etc. That is another debate for another time, and no one is denying what Ava is saying about that. No one is arguing against what Ava is saying. This is what a lot of these leftist, liberalist, or feminists tend to do when they come on these kinds of shows, right? They just regurgitate things, statistics that they've read or shared around with each other in hopes that that is going to make them seem more educated when they're not actually interacting with the conversation that is happening right there and then. That is what Ava is doing here, okay? And the point of this debate is whether or not Me Too has gone too far and encouraging unfair and inaccurate accusations of sexual assault that shouldn't exist. The point of this debate is that Me Too has encouraged and enabled women, in particular, to make false allegations against people. For instance, it has enabled the eradication of the line between regret and consent. Women from everywhere are believing that it is okay to categorise a man they regret sleeping with the likes of Harvey Weinstein and other predators and groomers. Regretting isn't the same as not consenting. You have every right to regret a sexual encounter, but you do not have a right to ruin somebody's life because you regret that time with them by calling them an abuser, a rapist, whatever derogatory language you use to call them. Once again, this is the sentiment that most modern feminists have. They focus on the lack of rape cases that go to trial. They say the same thing over and over again as if we don't know that it's a thing. Something like that is very difficult to navigate and improve, so we instead focus on how to improve on the way we teach our children and our teenagers to be mature about interactions and intimate relationships. The Me Too movement doesn't do that. It enables women to adjust narratives to fit one that makes them a victim. I'm not saying that that's the case always, but it's definitely escalated since the Me Too movement encouraged people to believe all women.
The idea that you can teach rapists not to rape is insane, because they already know.
What do you mean?
That it's illegal. Okay, right. You're saying if boys wouldn't know what's assault and what isn't.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. The idea that rather than taking the power out of someone who can make a false accusation is what they're actually, most of them are concerned about. Specifically, my friends, for example, who would never dream of doing something like that. But then what the feminists fail to understand is you can educate
The
evils.
feminists.
Did you not identify yourself as a feminist study?
No, I didn't actually.
Oh, okay,
Piers
sorry.
called me that.
Piers
You're not
did,
a
so then
feminist?
that's...
But Piers labelled me.
Actually, I
as
called
that.
you a toxic feminist.
Okay, then if that's my
I'll take
presupposition,
that.
that's
Yeah,
wrong.
go on.
Fair enough.
Not listening to what Connor is actually saying and just gets triggered about being labelled as a feminist.
I would like to know whether you accept that women, and particularly teenage girls and young women, sometimes give out pretty mixed signals. They give out mixed messages. They're not even sure what they want at any given time.
I think we're victim blaming.
Young women, and women in general, do give out mixed signals. It's in our DNA. That's what we do. It's got nothing to do with victim blaming, and Ava is bringing out the buzzwords against Isabel because Isabel is telling her the truth.
I don't think
I
that's
think we're-
victim
I think
blaming.
Come off
So
it,
do
Ava.
you
I think we are
accept?
straying into
Come
a
off
point.
it. Every
you-
sinew of your body knows what she just said.
Do you
has a
accept
merit
women
to it.
can sometimes
It's a
give
woman
off
saying it
mixed
too. Come on.
messages? Come on, they
Look,
can.
I mean, sure, but
That's
I'm not.
a non-denial.
But I'm sure,
Yeah.
but I'm talking about assault.
So how are you
No, but
supposed
I
to...
don't think any of us disagree about assault. We're talking about the far greyer line of young teenage fumblings.
Yeah, exactly.
And if they've all stopped having sex, it's because they are actually terrified. And I think it's a great shame if they're terrified into actually having no physical interaction with opposite
Exactly
sex.
that.
Ava just agreed with Isabel, but proceeds with a, but I'm talking about assault here. We don't disagree with you on sexual assault. We're talking about the grey line where women and girls can say they've been assaulted and are believed immediately without a second thought because Me Too has encouraged that toxic way of thinking. There's a little bit where they start talking about historic assault claims, but I think personally that's teetering into a whole other conversation, and that's pretty much where the clip ends. Ava doesn't seem to be interested in listening to other points of view at all, and it's a shame that we call people like her journalists, because she doesn't strike me as such. Let me know what you think, and if there's a point I haven't made, please feel free to bring it up in the comments. I'm open to all opinions, granted that it's made with maturity. If you're going to be a dick to me, then I'll be a dick to you. It's a two-way street. We're all humans and we all reserve the right to an opinion without being degraded for it. I'll link the full video in the description if you want to take a look at it. I do suggest it because it's got everything that I didn't talk about, and I'm not telling you to stay away from it, so you can't say that I'm trying to gaslight anyone. Also, if you want to, my Instagram is in the description, so you can go follow that. Subscribe if you want. Go watch my other videos if you want to. I'll be honest, I'm not really too bothered. I make these videos for me, and if people agree with me, then fantastic. I'll see y'all later. Bye.